Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Bookspin. Today we're looking at World War Z by Max Brooks. This is an interesting sci-fi horror book with an unusual structure that combines three subgenres of speculative fiction. That is military sci-fi, apocalyptic fiction, and horror. Originally published in 2006, this is a zombie apocalypse tale in the form of an epistolary novel, in which we have a series of interviews by an unnamed UN operative with survivors of a great global conflict between humanity and the living dead. While humanity was ultimately victorious, the human cost of this war is enormous. The first thing that's worth mentioning about this book, I think, is the unusual writing style. What these interviews amount to is basically a culmination of short stories in which we learn about individual episodes of how the zombie pandemic took root in different parts of the world and how people responded to the crisis. Each episode follows a new character in an entirely different setting, and this could be anywhere in the world. These are structured in a roughly chronological order, and through these individual stories we can gradually piece together the sequence of important events in the timeline of the war throughout the globe. Now, early on in the book, we are introduced to the origins of the outbreak through Patient Zero, and this is a 12-year-old boy in a village in China who gets bitten by something unidentified in the river. And he develops a horrible illness, and it soon becomes apparent that a horrendous viral disease has emerged, in which those who fall prey to the virus basically become walking corpses. They lose all of their intelligence, their humanity and their personality and their basic biological functions, and are mindlessly drawn to devouring living flesh, especially human flesh. A bite from a zombie is always fatal, and the only way to neutralize a zombie is to kill it by destroying its brain or burning it to the ground. So the pandemic rapidly spreads to all corners of the globe, decimating humanity and leading to the almost total breakdown of civilization. Throughout the course of the novel, we get to see the drastic actions that governments and armies and individuals take in response to the pandemic through the lens of interviews with individual survivors. So, if you're into horror and dystopian fiction, I think you'll probably appreciate this book. This is one of the bleakest and most horrifying books that I've ever read. As you might expect from a zombie story, there are plenty of violent and disturbing scenes. Life is a constant struggle for survival in this world, alongside the ever-present threat from the hordes of the living dead which have taken over the earth. There are a plethora of other difficulties to overcome to survive in this harsh post-apocalyptic world, such as finding shelter, finding food and community and weapons and so on. Now, Max Brooks introduced these ideas in some detail in his previous book, The Zombie Survival Guide, which I have here. And he brings these to life throughout the short stories in World War Z. Reading this book really puts things into perspective. So whatever problems or challenges that you have in your life right now, they are nothing compared to the ordeals that people go through in this book. So, let me tell you what I enjoyed about this book. Firstly, it's quite refreshing to see zombies in literary form. I have seen the zombie apocalypse portrayed countless times in visual media. In fact, the success of this particular novel also led on to some high-profile adaptations with the Brad Pitt film and the video game. So it's interesting to see this crisis in this book portrayed through multiple perspectives around the world and consider the socio-political consequences of the pandemic. There are a few individual stories and characters that really stood out as quite memorable for me. So, for example, one of my favorite episodes was there's this reclusive Japanese otaku character who is forced to escape his apartment and face the world and the zombies outside, but only once his parents stop leaving food for him outside his door and the internet gets cut off. That was one of my favourite stories. But that said, there were some episodes that were not so interesting for me. So I would say I wasn't consistently engaged with the narrative. There are a lot of stories focused on military personnel, but personally I'm more interested in the civilian survivor stories. So sometimes I would just start getting interested in a character and I wanted to learn more about their story, and then the interview would end and the book would move on to someone else. And this sometimes made it a little frustrating to read. But overall though, I think World War Z is a solid and ambitious and innovative zombie thriller novel. And if you love sci-fi horror and apocalyptic disasters and military survival stories, you will probably enjoy this. I'm giving it a rating of 3.5 stars. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more sci-fi content.